Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast presented by Greatest Ultimate Bag. I'm Dan Hilton and he's Matt Pippin Auletta, and week 5 is in the books with week 6 fast approaching. It's a rematch with Boston at 7 p.m. at Joseph F. Pacina Field this Friday. But before we get there, we need to talk about Alumni Night and the 23-15 win over the Philadelphia Phoenix. So who better to do that with than an Empire alum who is at the game and now here with me on the podcast. So not only how's it going on this, what, at least for myself, I would say is a bad hair day, hence the hat if you're watching along on YouTube. But it does give me an opportunity to plug some Empire merch as well. So hats, shirts, all that good stuff on empireultimate.shop or shopempireultimate.com. There we go. So either way, if you're watching on YouTube, I also remind you to subscribe, by the way. But other than that, how's it going, Matt?
Good. Speaking of hat, you brought up yours organically. I saw this really floppy B Ultimate hat on the merch tent, and alumni night. I do a little work for the team still, and I was like, "Hey, can one of these make their way into my player pack?" And they said, "Sure." So, unofficial plug. B Ultimate's really floppy, kind of runny hat. Love it, top notch.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but I only speak for myself that if you have children, because I have the head size of a child. If you have children,
same.
That great. Exactly. So small-headed people, great. I've also seen some of the larger-headed people on the team also fit their heads in the hats. So yes, the hats wind up being very bendy, very stretchy for all types of people. Okay, so with the hat stuff aside, there were a few hatted players for both teams in the game that we watched, and that's the end of that. So as usual, I'm going to let you pick the first actual topic we get into today. So topic 1 is Hux. Topic 2 is just one name, and that is Randolph. So I ask you, would you like to start today, with Hux or with Randolph?
Hux, because I'm going to plug my boy Charles. Charles Weinberg out there slinging it. He's been great every single week. I was an early adopter of the Charles for unofficial team MVP, even though he'll never be considered for real MVP. Just loving what he's doing out there this season.
Yeah, I think going over at the end of the game with Trisha Smith on the broadcast, I'm trying to think who was the MVP of this game. And of course, I said the one name, Randolph. His stat line was unbelievable. But Charles Weinberg in the game, because of the plus minus, it doesn't jump off the page to you. He only actually had 3 assists and a +1. But he did lead the team with 545 total yards. Of the 11 of 12 hucks that the Empire had, he clearly had, I think it was the 3 longest of them, where he had those 3 all of which were backhand hucks, which the mark allowed. He was at 92% on his completions. He had the 2 turnovers, but he also had the 3 hockey assists. So while the stats and the plus minus, I don't want to overdo that. You and I watched the game. Charles was really good and important in that game to everything the Empire were trying to do. And I think through the loss to Atlanta, as the Empire and you and I are still kind of thinking about that moment, and the Empire not looking their best at times, and where are their weaknesses and faults in what they were. Now 3 games since that Atlanta loss, and the names that we're saying and looking on the stat sheet, when we're looking at Jeff Holm, we're looking at Charles Weinberg, we're looking at Oliver Chartok, this Empire offense has once again figured out whether they're hucking it against Philly or whether they're not against Boston and Montreal. They seem to have refigured out the identity that they have as an offensive line. And I don't think outside of our narrative, the Empire narrative, I don't think the national narrative really, to your point, is going to say, all right, we want to talk about Charles Weinberg and Oliver Chartok and Jeff Holm. Those are names that just, no offense, but in the content space, don't move the needle. They don't get all the clicks and all the attention. But when you watch that game, those 3 names in particular are who move the disc, who can get everything going, who create space for Yacht's 5 goals, who create room for Jack off that timeout to just go right at his defender because Philly had to worry about everybody else. And then Jack goes right into the end zone for Elliot Chartok, who also I thought was really good in his return to the lineup with his 5 assists for the +5 and 421 total yards.
Yeah, Jeff Holm also, he made a few more deep runs where he was rewarded with some throws going to him. In the previous game, he it seemed like mostly scored just kind of wandering off on his own in the end zone, a la John Lithio, and just getting easy throws, which is great when you can make that space. But this week, it seemed like he was cutting hard, being decisive, and he was getting great throws to him. And he was just, he was getting rewarded for actively doing stuff as opposed to defenders kind of just somehow missing him.
Yeah, and when you think about that offensive line that does seem at full health, like the 7 have kind of been the started. Now, of course, Liam Haberfield is the wild card in all of that. And there are other players that can jump over as well. But between Oliver, Elliott, Solomon Mershmeyer Bailey, Weinberg, Yacht, Jack Williams, and Jeff Holm, those are all 7 players who were on the team last year. Those are all 7 players that know each other, that have overlapped with club stuff and, of course, with the Empire. And I know Elliott struggled against Atlanta, but he looks so much more comfortable and back to himself against the Philadelphia Phoenix. And it's just so important when your center handler, again, is struggling a little bit. And if anything, we're not sure about the status of Sean Keegan and his back and what's going to be going on with his availability for Boston. But I think that does begin a pretty interesting problem for you, that since Sean's been gone and since Elliott has come back, it seems like the 7 that I just named against Philly have really figured it out. Now, the real question then becomes, now Philly, no disrespect to them, but defensively, they did not give, we'll say, the toughest fight to the Empire offense. So the question would be, if a team is taking away more of what Philly didn't take away, right, is that something you lean on? And do you add Sean Keegan back into the mix if he's healthy? And how do you go about navigating that rotation?
Yeah, that'll be a hard problem for the coaching staff to solve because, I mean, Keegan is a great player. There's no doubt about that. But, you don't want to mess up the chemistry if he hasn't been practicing with them. And, they seem like they're clicking. They seem like everybody is filling a role. They know what to do. It's tough when multiple MVPs just vacate the team, Babbitt, Oscar, and then, you play one game that's not that challenging and, all right, things are fine. And then all of a sudden you get punched in the face by an Atlanta team playing an awesome game. You weren't ready for the adjustments. It was tough. This now, it seems like they're figuring themselves out. They're all kind of adapting and doing what is best for the team and the roles they have. And then to just like curveball it again, even when you add a great player, sometimes it just kind of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. If the 1 step back is at the wrong time, it could result in a loss, but it might still be fine for the overall goal of the season to, win another championship. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. It's better than not having enough good players. So just be curious to see who gets slotted in where, if and when everyone is healthy and available.
Yeah, could you speak a little bit to, that space and different roles and positions on the field? Because while Keegan can push into the deep space, we saw that plenty in the first game against Montreal and when he's been available. But more than likely, of the 7 I named, it would be Jeff Holm or Oliver Chartok, who would, in theory, jump back over and play a few more D points if Sean Keegan fit back in on the O-line we're talking about. But then you're talking a little bit about redundancy as well. Like, we know that you don't really need, and I say need with quotes here, you're not going to put Ethan Ford and Elliott Chartok because their skill sets do overlap in a way that you'd want Ethan to do the same things that Elliott does on the D-line. And because of, again, what Elliott has the chemistry with Jack and the rest of that O-line, more comfortable there, and Ethan is much more comfortable slotting back over. And I would also argue that Ethan is just a better a man-on-man defender and is able to, use his body in the way he does defensively. And again, he's also made some pretty fantastic plays on the mark over the years as well. But all that said, it's not as simple, right? As far as roles and positions, to just slot, again, Oliver Chartok or Jeff Holm and throw them on the D-line sometimes and fit Sean Keegan in, because they're entirely different. Not even the organic handler to cutter roles, but Oliver jumps back in the backfield quite a bit and is just a bit more of a threat downfield. They just do different things, I guess to say. And for yourself, you didn't play a lot of D points in your career. Now you can play D, but your skill set was obviously always more useful on offense. So not to say that Elliott Chartok and Sean Keegan can't play defense, but in the same way that Solomon Mershmeyer Bailey began his career on defense for the Empire, because you were occupying that role at the time, and now Solomon Mershmeyer Bailey you can't take him off the O-line. But those roles feels like they're established enough and different that you can't just fit Sean back in because he does different things.
Yeah, it's tough. And, game to game, it could vary depending on the defense or the conditions. My last year on the team, I mostly just played defense, but there was a game or two where I did kind of get thrown in on offense when the conditions were bad. And, if we were trying to go upwind, I was a lefty. They wanted another option for like a big lefty backhand, depending on which way the mark was. So, I didn't have a massive impact in those games, but there are adjustments. But yeah, when you add Keegan with Chartok, Elliott, and Rushmeyer Bailey, Jack can handle, like, everybody on the O-line can basically handle it when needed. They fill back, sometimes they just cut in, they wander behind the throw. And if they get stuck back there for 4 or 5 throws, no one seems to care because they're all comfortable back there. So I think one of the problems with Atlanta is they were heavy on the hybrids, but they were hybrids that leaned a little more towards handler heavy. And that just kind of prevented the offense from moving and being as dangerous as it needed to be downfield to make some space. So yeah, again, it's an interesting riddle to try and solve, because you don't not play some of these players just because. It's like you probably move somebody somewhere, or you turn it into like an 8-man rotation where maybe somebody else picks up like 3 or 4 deep points to kind of fill in. But again, it depends on the situation. If it's rough conditions and you need to generate offense with your defense and you can't use all of your timeouts for that, then maybe moving Oliver to defense a little bit to help with the offense makes a little sense in some of those games. But it's going to be different game to game, situation to situation.
Hey Ryan, have you ever thought to yourself how you could fit everything you need for one weekend into a single bag?
And there's an incredible layout block.
Oh, there's a Callahan! Mike Dross did it for New York!
From cleats to jerseys to discs, pennies, water bottles, the greatest bag can help.
And this is going to be a greatest here.
This is going to be a Callahan for Ryan Drost.
Thanks to Greatest Bag for being a sponsor of the New York Empire.
Well, as far as the defense, that's a really good transition, because we've gone this far without talking about John Randolph, whose line was unbelievable, just a disgusting line. And in that 1990s kid, stinky face, just disgusting here with him and a +7 in the game. He had 3 goals, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Now, one of those goals and one of those blocks was the same thing. It was the Callahan. But even the blocks, when I say the 2 blocks, one of them was the Callahan. The other one was that end of quarter goal line layout on Sean Mott going the other direction. I mean, and John Randolph played just 1 0 point and has that kind of impact on a game. I mean, he's been unbelievable this season when available, but because of his national duties and his and some of his scheduling as well, he's not always available. But boy, he has been a star this season. And going back to the thing that has become a theme for us, the pressure that I want to shout it again, Axel Agami Contreras, who also had 2 goals, an assist, and a block in that game for a +4. Not a lot of total yards, but 100% on his completions. And when you're getting that kind of pressure on the disc, obviously Philly wants to air it out, but not only were they struggling to air it out, they were 10 of 16 on their hucks. So yes, of course, Philly's going to throw it up, but it didn't seem like so many of those hucks were even rhythm. They weren't comfortable. They were just kind of doing it because they had to. And some of those also for Philly that were completed were end of quarter situations that James Pollard was bringing down as well. So, I mean, John Randolph was, just fantastic. I mean, how much more can you say about a guy that looks like when he's not in that lineup, it looks like the Empire are losing a huge piece.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best players on the team. Taking him out is a blow. It's just the trickle-down effect of everybody has a different defender, and then the shift down the line, it makes everybody's matchup a little bit harder. I don't know. He's just amazing. That's all there is to it. The pressure by the Empire defense, it was nice to see them like really put the screws on Philly, even when the game was not really that close. They didn't like give up, let it get a little close as they did in some of the other games. They just they trounced them. They let the D-liners rack up some goals and assists. They didn't really have to use timeouts to get the offense back there because, they had a lead. It was safe. And the defense kind of got to play, which is great to, build some reps when you might need that in a tighter game or a more important contest. Philly missed a few, deep shots or whatever. Antoine got a really nice D on one that he kind of looked like he was really, really ready for and was hoping they were going to throw it all the way across the field. But Philly just missed a lot of easy, shorter throws too. And part of that's pressure, but also part of it was just poise and bad mistakes. And then I think the Empire defense was also buoyed and given a little jolt because Philly was chirping at them for way too much of the game. I mean, just tone deaf. I was on the sideline right behind the Empire bench, just talking to some of the guys during the game and everything. And I was kind of shocked at some of the Philly guys jawing at Empire while they're down like 6 goals in the third. I mean, the game was over in like the second quarter, and Philly was chirping as if they were the greatest team ever assembled, and like, watch out for me, I'm gonna get you. It's like, dude, you don't even know that you've lost, and it's the middle of the second quarter. Like, who are you jawing at, and what are you saying? And that just made some of the Empire guys just play hard throughout a game that wasn't close.
Well, I'd say too, the conditions that you mentioned, there was almost no wind. And I think that was all summed up by that. I guess it was basically a huck, that flick huck by Marquez in the second quarter or something that just floated so beautifully, and wide open Breton Tan on a miscommunication by Philadelphia. And that kind of summed up Philly's defense, because as I mentioned again to Trisha on the broadcast, I look up and down this roster. I really like Roger Chu and Tom Glass in charge, and they got a good team. I mean, Paul Owens is a star in this league, and they have everything they need. Even Suvorov filling in the 2 goals, the assist, the block. He feels like, that 6th or 7th man, and then Couchy coming in with Alex Thorne gone, still did a pretty good job in the game, 94% completions. And of course, James Pollard is an absolute star, just like we thought he was, winning end of quarter situation. So on the margins, it felt a lot to me in that first half. This is not taking anything away from the Empire, but I felt like Philly beat themselves a little bit with the unforced errors and the mistakes, the throwing miscues, where all of a sudden they looked up, to your point, and then they went down. It was 3-3 after the first, but then they're 7-3 outscored in the second, to your point. And I think where the game really felt like it was lost was, as we'll kind of talk about Beau Kittredge here for a second, a little aside here in the game, he had his number 50 retired, so he came up in the booth for halftime in the third quarter. So as we're there, we're kind of focusing a little bit on the action, but Beau Kittredge is there. I mean, and anyone who knows their ultimate history knows that when Beau Kittredge is around, you ask him questions and talk to him and try to get into it. So by the time we really, then Trisha and I really focused on the game again there at the end of the third, it was truly and ultimately over, where that game kind of, and the Empire do a great job of this. When they go up by 5 or 6, they just kind of they don't take their foot off the gas, but they know how to get into second gear and just kind of go, okay, you scored, we'll score 1. We got an additional break, great. And then they score, we score, they score, we score, and we're up by 5. So you just kind of bleed the clock that way. And I thought the Empire in the third quarter did that really well. They were 10 of 25 on their breaks overall. And even, again, I think the offensive holds also helped that. They were 13 of 16 with the offense. So the offense for the Empire weren't on the field very long, which meant that the defense for the Philly just had to keep coming back out there. The offense for Philly just had to keep coming back out there. And you could tell by the end, they were largely gassed because they had spent so much time on the field and working so hard. And obviously the Empire D makes you work hard too.
Yeah. It was a lack of poise. The pressure and the intensity was just too much for them. That's all there was to it. One more thing about the defense before we transition. Mike Drost, where's that D, buddy? I was at the game. Come on, man. I know you're listening. So I'm just kidding. But he started to look like his brother, where he would sulk when he was close and he missed. That was the classic Ryan move for a long time. Ryan would always be broody and just be like, oh, I can't believe I missed that, or I can't believe we lost, or that, Mike looked more like Ryan than himself that game. So I'm sure he's thinking about it, and I know he wants that 200. So I think once he gets it, it'll just, the mental block will kind of fade away, and he'll probably just get more blocks and it won't be a thing. But I could see he really, really wanted it, and close on a few.
Well, I did ask his mom and dad who were at the game afterwards how they want to see it. If at the end, when time was expiring, if that had stayed in bounds and he touched it, that would have been 200. And somebody else had said, oh, I don't think he wants it that way. Then I asked his mom and dad, and his dad goes, I don't care. 200 is 200. Like, I don't care if he gets on a disc that's going to be hitting the ground. He just touches it, and he goes, just let it happen, whatever happens. And yeah, I mean, the Michael Maroon, all of 18-year-old Michael Maroon, who just went to prom the day before, getting up there in the sky. And, there are some moments, and, I will say about the Drost this season, still so important, still such great athletes. But I mean, they bolster it's not a D2, but they bolster your D2 to a huge level. Nobody has those kind of resources on a D2 line. But yeah, he has been on the receiving end of a few hucks that he has won in the past that he hasn't won this year. And maybe there is something, but also maybe there isn't. Maybe just there was an 18-year-old kid who was excited he'd gone to his prom, stole some dance moves in his legs, and got up there in the sky. But yeah, it'll come from Mike.
that guy went up early, and it caught a lot of people by surprise, not just Michael, who was unfortunately on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, and again, Michael Maroon will likely be doing that for the next 14, 15 years. And if he does get 14, 15 years, by the way, that'll be how old he is. I mean, that'll be how old Mike Dross is while he's still playing. So, yeah, yes, sometimes the kids teach you something. But speaking of learning and teaching, Beau Kittredge, to just kind of wrap this up, I do say this a little tongue-in-cheek, but now there's 3 Empire jerseys retired that they had sitting up there. It was Ben Ivers, of course, who gave so much of the early years of this team. Number 4, Matt Pippin Auletta was retired last season. And then, of course, Beau Kittredge himself retired by the Empire. And again, I think 3 very different players. I mean, you're here, but I'm speaking of it, that 3 different players who provided different things to the Empire as an organization, but I think really do sum up what the Empire has had been in its large spectrum of different players. Where Ben Ivers, again, the early seasons, defense, putting everything on the line. Not everybody was watching all the Ben Ivers highlights, but just so important to the team. And unfortunately, his career was cut short with the injuries and concussions, but still gave so much of himself to the team. And, things were cut early. Then for yourself, kind of going out the way you wanted to, 2019, winning that title. Offensively, you'd been there since day one. And on the offensive side of the ball, as opposed to Ben Ivers on the defensive side of the ball, and now giving back, of course, to the franchise, kind of, surmising that it is all about the Empire family. And then Beau Kittredge, he'd been everywhere else. He had done everything else. And then taking the Empire franchise, so it was a good franchise, and turning it into the class of the league since his arrival in 2018. And I do find it, not to say I'm making a narrative out of it, but I think there is something to be said about each of those different names and the reasons why they were retired by the Empire. And it's great to see that Beau's legacy has been added because, again, he had a league legacy, but I would say that the legacy of Beau in the league is different, but also kind of the same when it comes to the Empire, where he entered the league and he just took it to 10. And the same thing with the Empire. He took a team that was good, but then he took it to 10. And I think he's done the same thing with the Empire that he did for the league.
Yeah, to be even mentioned in the same breath as Beau Kittredge is just like absurd to me. I joke with my friends all the time that I'm an all-time great, and that's just absurd. I always, confidence helped me play well for sure. It was like a shtick kind of at times, but like it's hard to even put into context what Beau was to Ultimate at the time, or even before the ADL, UFA, and then what he did during his time in the league. So to even be like right there is absurd. And yeah, 3 very different players. I mean, my jersey's not up there because I was an amazing player. I was pretty good, but Beau was describing me to someone who he brought to the game and like the ceremony after the game. And he basically made it sound like, he's like, oh, Pippin like kind of was like a gritty whatever. And he basically made it sound like I was a half crazed like feral goblin on the field. And he used a lot of adjectives that like don't sound flattering at face value. And the woman he's saying this all to, she's like starting to look more and more horrified, like just probably thinking like, Beau, you are not complimenting this man at all. And like, I could see the horror setting in on her face, and she's like looking at him, and then she looks at me and she realizes like I'm beaming. Like I could not be smiling more at this description he is giving of me. And then we turn, Beau and I, and we like look at each other. I was like, man, that's like beautiful. That's like exactly, that is me and what I tried to bring to the field every single time, like summed up so perfectly. Like, yes, I was a lunatic. So yeah. As far as like what he brought to the team, it did give us a sense at the time that like we could do this. It's really hard to just put it into words. Like it made a huge difference just that he was there. Never mind how good he was on the field.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing having gotten to talk to him in the booth for so long, because this is just a normal guy. But Trisha and I were kind of fangirling before and after because, Charlie Eisenhood, the producer, had already prepared it. That clip from 2006 where he jumps over as a Colorado Mama Bird, he jumps over a player, and Trish and I were talking in the booth, like we watched that 1,000 times, in the Wayback Machine, not to, get all sentimental, but in 2009 of the 2 people that you're just talking about, I did get a run through D playing Snultimate against one of you. And the other one, I went back to my dorm to watch him jump over a person on a grainy little SD video, and that is the difference. And yeah, I mean, Beau Kittredge for a certain generation just has meant so much that obviously you see it if you watch it on Instagram or you watch the highlights, I'm half of the height of Beau Kittredge. That's at least what the camera makes it look like, where you barely got me and my head in frame, and then you're trying to not cut off the top of Beau's head with the camera. So yeah, I mean, what he just meant to that point to the Empire, to give the Empire legitimacy and say, not only are Yacht and Babbitt and Jack Williams and all the players that didn't get enough credit in your generation with CJ Willett and the Dross and again, the latter days of Izzy Bryant and some of the just really good long-term players, Matt Lamar, who were on the team for so long, that it was kind of like, hey, we built this program. And Beau Kittredge, I really felt like was, because even when he arrived to the Empire, that Beau that was playing for the Empire, especially the first year when he was not physically at his best. And I mean, even the age-wise and the kid that jumped over somebody in 2006, we're talking 2018, we're talking 12 years later. So he wasn't even the same player he was for San Jose and even San Francisco or for Dallas. But yet that presence, and you can't teach height either. And you think about the game against Raleigh and on the road in Raleigh that went to overtime, where it looked like the team had gotten punched in the mouth. It looked like Raleigh was giving the Empire everything they possibly could. And then here comes overtime, and Beau Kittredge kind of says, this is the moment I've been in 1,000 times. I mean, whether or not you want to use platitudes like GOAT or whatever, to me, it's going to be a long time before anyone is a better winner in this sport than Beau Kittredge. He is, if you think the term GOAT is equal to winner, then that's your GOAT, because that dude won everything all the time. Again, from your and I era for 15 years, if you were in the same division or you were in the same league, whatever it was, Beau Kittredge was standing between you and a trophy or a first place medal. Whatever it was, Beau was going to be in the way all the time, and a testament to an ultimate winner. And whatever he can give back to the game as well, even just a conversation I had, to your point, it's just so exciting. So like, while he was there for about 15 minutes, I wish he could stay longer, because I was like, I have a million questions for you, specific questions that I know I'm not going to get into from all these different moments and things. So yeah, thanks to Beau Kittredge, and congratulations on the number 50, because at the end of the day, as you know, Matt, he's just a guy too. He's just a person who gave a lot to this sport, where we're still using porta potties, and we're going away for a weekend, and people are getting smarter with tents and things, but you get the point. There is still something very much grassroots about the sport, and he was there from the start, and now he's here with the bright lights.
Yeah, I don't even really have anything else to add. GOAT sounds about right.
Yep. All right. So from one GOAT to guys that in this current generation, you could argue have a stake in that conversation, with Ben Yacht and the likes of Jeff Babbitt. Again, that not necessarily that matchup, because again, they both play offense, but with two guys that have been the best players in the league over the last 5 years or so. Add Jack Williams to that mix, and one of the best handlers in Ben Sadok. So it's Tuesday afternoon as we're recording this. You're likely hearing this hopefully by Wednesday. That means editor Dan, instead of podcasting Dan, decided to get to work. But when it comes to the 20s, there's no Ben Katz. So I obviously personally, and I think many Empire fans, are a bit disappointed that we won't likely get to see Ben Katz. And Cole Davis-Brand, also non-roster for this one. Kalen McSweeney will likely jump back in, and Gustav Haflin is out injured. So the 20 for Boston, though, they do bring Orion Cable. So you lose Ben Katz, and you add to your D-line Orion Cable, which does make that Boston defense look very different than the team that the Empire took on 2 weeks ago up in Boston. Because as you and I mentioned, the Empire did kind of try to figure out how do we get around what makes Ben Katz so dangerous. And I thought the fact that the Empire O-line kind of worked around him made it so interesting. Now, without Ben Katz, that means you're going to have a little bit different. And if anything, with Orion Cable obviously adding his athleticism, it's going to be a different challenge for this Empire O this week.
Yeah, it definitely a different challenge. I think the Empire handled Ben Katz and the junk he can kind of throw at you really well. But they also had different personnel. Now they're back to more of what we'll probably consider like a stable O-line for this week. So Be interesting to see how that works. Orion Cable, he could cover Yacht, he could cover Jeff Holm. So, but be curious to see where the pieces go and what it looks like. But, limiting the Empire's more like potent deep shot game, might force him to play a little smaller, which, if Ben Katz was also there, that'd be great if you had both things working at the same time. But we'll see. I think that the Empire offense has figured themselves out at a good time, and it should feel like a high-level game. Babbitt doesn't drop one or two easy ones maybe this week. Maybe the game is a real nail-biter. I'm sure he will be excited to play back in front of the home crowd here, even if he claims he's not. I'm sure he would love to stick it to Empire with a W, but
yeah, I think trying to talk to the players and the coaches and everybody around the team about, that what it is. It's a homecoming of a familiar face and what he meant to the Empire franchise and having alumni night last week. So it's just going to be, how do I say this? Maybe next season will be different, but it is going to be a bit different of a feeling. I wouldn't compare it to like LeBron James coming back to Cleveland after going to Miami, nothing like that, but just more of a, there's something that doesn't look right about this, about him at Joseph F. Facina Field in a Boston shirt. There's going to be something that just feels, I think, odd about it. But these players are professionals, and they've been in different situations. And again, in the club game, guys just jump around all the time, and you have to play against friends and foes and whatever it is. So, yeah, I mean, as much as the game, as we just talked about, being decided for the Empire on the offensive side of the ball, I think it was some of the mistakes that were made by the Glory O-line and the turnovers that were, as I said, kind of unforced in that game as well, that kind of took that game out of reach for the Empire. So the same thing, if the Empire defense can force some of the things they did, and Liam Haberfield again, Brett and Tan again, Matt LaBar having another really good game, Sam Jonas continuing to come out of his shell, those are kind of the pieces, if anything, around the margins, Alati, Oloro, that can, I think propel the Empire at home, which I want to remind people, even though the unbeaten streak was broken, you're supposed to win your home games. And the Empire still have not lost since June 23rd, 2018. So I'll keep saying that. It has been a long time since the Empire took an L at home, where they have, even against Philly, they've largely been just putting teams away. DC is the only team that they don't really put away at home, and they put away everybody else. So, yeah, this is a huge matchup and one I'm looking forward to for sure.
I like to think I reverse cursed the team by getting kicked out of that last home game they lost. I think I definitely, my aura is there propelling them somehow to victory after victory as I shake the fence screaming from what is, I guess, technically a place I was allowed to still stand. It was unclear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the irony, right? That not only did you come back the next year, but are we supposed to have you just watch the games from behind the fence now? But I mean, we let you back in the stadium.
I wanted to climb that 20-foot fence and just scream from the top, but it was too hard with my cleats on. I should have just taken them off and done it barefoot, really solidified myself as a lunatic in the moment. But
I really thought you were going to go, because I was up in the booth for that game, and I really thought you were going to go full Castaway, because you had already ripped off the jersey. So I thought you were just going to go and climb that big rock face behind, which again, so I thought we were just going to go full Robinson Crusoe there. But all right, so for a little PSA, yeah, don't go up on the rock. Actually pay your ticket to get into the stadium. We always appreciate that. So it was alumni night last week, and this is going to feel like a similar thing. Boston Glory, 7 p.m., Joseph F. Facina Field this Friday, May 31st. So, Matt, I'll give you the last word. Any predictions for Boston against New York?
Oh, it's a win for New York. They're figuring it all out. They're looking good. I think they win this one a little more comfortably, even with Orion Cable maybe putting on some sort of aerial display.
Yeah, just looking at the Empire 20, seems like everybody can be available. Even Sean Keegan is going to be dressed, and we'll see if he enters the 20 and see his status. But yeah, fully healthy Empire and a fully available Empire is still one of the best teams in the league.
If Keegan plays, I'm changing it to a loss. Empire loss. Just kidding, Sean, in case you listen to this. You probably don't, but that's all right.
Well, we'll give Anthony Nunez and Matt Cat-Stevens something to think about. All right, again, Friday, May 31st, 7 p.m., just for Facina Field. So as always, we'll see you there.